Great. So make sure you put your name. Monroe. Some people call me Money. It's true. Okay, lesson. This is 1.3 we're on. The topic is subtracting integers. The date is 9/6/16, and this is period 7. Some of you started writing down the EQ, but I have how do we add and subtract negative integers. This sounds fairly simple, this question. However, something happens in your brain when we start doing this, and it's like playing tricks on you or something. You'll see what I mean. It happens to everybody. Okay, so the first thing we're going to write down right in the notes and examples portion, and I'm going to put 3 stars by it because this is the thing where I said that was worth a lot, like 5 tickets, right? We don't subtract. We add the opposite. Which was that additive inverse thing. We don't subtract, we add the opposite. So here's an example. We have 3 minus 8. 3 minus 8. So we want to change that into adding. So all you have to do is go 3 plus, and then in parentheses, a negative 8. The reason we do this is because a lot of people have a hard time separating the minus from the negative, and they are the same thing, but we don't see it that way until we've had a lot of practice. Okay, so by changing it to add and then put the negative in parentheses, it helps our brain to figure out what's going on. Do you guys know the answer? What is it? -5. Good. Let's try another one. So we have 3 minus 4. So we can rewrite that as 3 plus a -4. So that's the opposite. That's the additive inverse. So what is 3 plus a -4? -1. Good. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Most people can get that stuff. It gets a little bit trickier from here on out. One of the things you'll notice in your book, or some of you noticed, was this thing called double negatives. So write double negatives on the left side. Double negatives. Does anybody know what to do if they're double negatives? Did you see that in your book? Nobody? Maybe when I show you, you'll remember. So here's an example of a double negative. Let's say we have 3 minus a -2. Anyone think they know the answer? You do? What do you think it is?
-1.
It's not -1. Any other ideas, Angel?
1.
It's not 1. You guys know? Tell each other. Oh, they disagree. What do you think it is? -5, and Quesadilla thinks it's 5. Wait, did you say 5?
No.
I thought you said 5. What'd you say? 5? Anybody else think it's 5? Since I said it's not -5. It is actually a +5. And I'll show you. So whenever you have double negatives like that, turn this into a big plus sign. That's what you do. But I'm going to tell you why, because a lot of teachers don't tell you why. They just make you memorize it, right? Question?
Which one do you turn into a big plus?
These 2 negatives and the parenthesis, and just like connect the dots. Whoa, it's a big plus sign.
Okay.
Cool, huh?
Yeah.
So here's why. Technically, there's an imaginary number right here. Does anybody know what it is?
0.
It's not 0. I'm circling it. 1. Who said that? Good, because when you multiply any number by 1, it stays the same, right? So if I multiply this by a 1, because technically it's there, it's just you can't see it, then that would be 1 times a negative 2, which is still negative 2, but now there's this rule about multiplying negatives we're going to get to. A negative times a negative is always a positive. So this is really a multiplier. Negative times a negative is a positive. So you change this whole thing to 3 plus 2, which equals 5. A little bit confusing, but you'll remember it eventually. Okay, let's do some examples with the double negatives. So we'll call this, I guess that one was example 1, so we'll call this example 2, because these are all under the double negatives. So let's try negative 10 minus a negative 7. Anybody think they know what that one is? Okay, 1, 2, 3, say it.
17.
I heard 17 and I heard 3. Were there any other numbers I heard? Those are both wrong. What do you think? Negative 3. You must have done some extra practice. So this remains negative 10, right? We said that. But this becomes a big plus sign. I have more negatives than I have positives, right? You see it? There's a positive 7 right there once I make this a big plus sign. This doesn't become a positive, only this. Okay? So here's the rule. When two negatives are right next to each other, it becomes a plus sign. That's what just happened, right? Two negatives right next to each other. They have to be right next to each other. Normally there's a parenthesis there. Sometimes there's not, so I want to show you one like that. So when two negatives are right next to each other, it becomes a plus sign. Okay, example 3 of the double negatives. I noticed this a lot more lately on worksheets they're doing these. So they'll put something like negative 5 minus 2. Have you guys seen that before?
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing, huh? So does the same rule apply even though there's not parentheses? Yeah. So this is the same as negative 5 plus 2, which is negative 3. And now, if you forgot, remember the T-chart thing? Aha.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, minus, and I have 5 negatives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have 2 positives. So I circle my 2 there, circle 2 there, those cancel each other out, and I'm left with 3 in the negatives. Do you see that? Remember that little thing you can do? Yeah. Some people use number lines, and that's fine too, so I'll show you that on a number line. And if you want to write it down, you can, but I'm just showing you. So let's say here I start at negative 5, and I go plus 2. So that means I have to go to the right. 2, right? You guys see that? So if I go 2 more this way, I'm at negative 3, which is my answer. So again, you can use the T-chart, you could use the number line, or maybe you just start to catch on and you don't need to use either anymore. Eventually that will happen. I promise. Okay. Let's do a couple more of the adding the opposite stuff. So let's just call it example 4. Keep it in order. So if we have a negative 10 minus 7, what is that? Do you know? You know? What is it?
Negative 17.
Good. Negative 17. Some people looked perplexed. So let me show you. I can use parentheses, and it's much easier to add the negatives. Is that much easier to see it now? For those of you who didn't get negative 17, now you can see you have a negative 10 and you have a negative 7, and you add them together. Just like at the top it said we don't subtract, we add the opposite. Okay, the same thing, it works like if you're on a number line. I'll just draw one and you can follow along if you want to. And let's say I'm at negative 10 and I need to subtract 7 more. Well, subtract means I go to the left. So if I'm subtracting 7, I'm back here at negative 17. You could also do the t-chart, but if I do that I'm going to have to draw 17 little negative signs, so I don't really want to. But you could. Does that clarify it for you guys? Some of you? Okay, let's try one more. Example 5. Let's do negative 5 minus 8. It's a very similar problem. You guys know it? Okay, what is it? Negative 13. That was a lot better this time. More people knew. Because you were thinking, oh, she just did this with parentheses and that helped me, so maybe you did it. Maybe you did this in your brain. You didn't write it down, but you did this in your brain. So now you can see it better. This takes a lot of practice, just like the other stuff. This takes even more, though. Okay? So if you feel like we're doing this every day until 8th grade, we are probably doing this every day until 8th grade. But not like 20 a day. It'll become like 2 or 3 a day in a warm-up. Okay? So we'll just keep practicing until we're 100% solid. We have to do one more thing, and that's the evaluating stuff that you saw. So I'm going to flip over my notes. And on the left side, write evaluate. And this is a math word, but I have like a little bit easier definition. Does anyone have a definition of evaluate that they like? You do? What do you think it is? Solve. Any other definitions? Like you guys said they use variables, right? So what you're doing is you're getting a number and you are putting that into an expression to solve it, and I just call that plug in. A plug-in. Easy to remember, right? Evaluate, plug in. So here's an example. The first example, I'll give you example 1. We're just doing 2 of these and then we're done. Let's say we have x equals negative 6 and y equals negative 5. And they give us an expression of x minus y. So all of these things would be given to you and you have to solve it. Whenever you evaluate or plug in, I want you to use parentheses every single time. And here's why. When you end up with negatives and double negatives, you'll get really confused pretty quickly. But if you use parentheses, it will help you. So draw your parentheses. This is negative 6. We have a minus in the middle. The y is negative 5. If you don't use parentheses, most often you will forget about this double negative thing. Okay, so this means we have to change the double negative to what? What does this become right here? A plus sign. So that's plus 5. And now we have negative 6 plus 5. Do we know that one? I can put it in parentheses if it helps you. What is it, you guys? Negative 1. We have 6 negatives and 5 positives. Do you see it now? We have more negatives than we have positives. Example 2. X equals negative 3. Y equals negative 4. Keeping it simple, right? Okay, and now here is the expression. I have negative x minus y. Negative x minus y. This is the tricky part. People always forget to put this negative on the outside. So put negative and then parenthesis for where we plug in. And what do we put in for x?
3.
Negative 3. Do you see how that made a double negative now? Now we have a minus, and then another parenthesis, and what do we put in for y?
Negative 4.
Negative 4. Now we have another double negative. So what happens to this first double negative? You can say it.
Change to positive.
Change to a positive 3, right? You don't really have to write the plus, but I'm doing it to show you. And what happens to the second double negative?
Stays the same.
What happens to the second double negative? You change to a plus. Okay, good. They do the same thing. And that's a plus 4. So now what's the answer? What's 3 plus 4? 7. You can start to see why it's super important to use the parentheses. You will definitely see those double negatives when you do that. If you don't use parentheses, 9 times out of 10 you'll get it wrong. And there's at least 3 of these on the first quiz. So make sure that you are using parentheses. Actually, I think that's important. Let's write on the left-hand side, star, use parentheses. Forgot the N. Parentheses. Okay. That's it for the notes, but do you guys want some U-tries or would you rather do them in the book?
You try.
Do a couple and then we'll do the book? Okay. I'll just do a couple from the book and then we won't have to do the book. Okay, so let's do a couple U-tries just to make sure. We won't do all the book pages on the board then. So, let's see here. Okay, so you try number 1. 14 minus 17. Remember, don't say your answer out loud. Just raise your hand when you know. A few people think they know. So like pretty much this half of the room thinks they know, and that half of the room is, well, some of you know. Do you guys know in the front? You know? Do you think you know? Okay, after I say 3, you say the answer. 1, 2, 3.
Negative 3.
Negative 3 is right. Good job. You can change it. You don't have to, but you could rewrite it as 14 plus a negative 17, and that might help you to see it. Okay, let's try another one. Number 2. Let's try 14 minus a negative 10. One person knows? Anybody else? Oh, good. 2 more people know. Okay, say the answer after I say 3. 1, 2, 3. 24 is right because this becomes a big plus sign. All right, one more to see if you really get it. I don't know. I'm not totally convinced. Let's try this one. 12 minus 26. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Negative 26.
Negative, I heard most people say 14. Here's how you do this so that you guys can guarantee you get it right. Just do the 26 minus 12 and 14, but you know that you have more negatives here than positives, right? So it has to be a negative answer. Okay, so we're going to do some work in the book.